So the last couple of chapters, Jesus has been breaking rules and poking the bear and really dedicated to his mission. No matter what lines he crossed, no matter who he crossed. We even saw some of his detractors forming alliances to attack him in previous chapters. So things are getting intense. Now, I mentioned that Jesus was very dedicated. He went from breaking the rules to poking the bear. But just because he was so intense about things doesn't mean he was stupid. That's why today, in chapter 5, Jesus takes a field trip.
So we can see from the outline that the first 20 verses is the story of Jesus healing a demoniac, someone possessed with a demon. And it's interesting to note that Jesus is no longer in home turf. He's gone to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, that is, to the country of the Gerasenes. That's what verse 1 says. There's a note in the NRSV that says that other ancient authorities, other of the early manuscripts of the Gospel of Mark, the ones that we still have, says Gadarenes, which makes more sense because Gadarn actually had a coastline on the Sea of Galilee, and the Garrison was a town further east, and it's still part of the same region that was called the Decapolis, or 10 cities that were kind of working together as a federation of cities. Again, this is foreign territory, very foreign territory, not part of Israel and Judah. And we know this because there's pigs, right? We're not in kosher territory because Jews did not have anything to do with pigs. Jesus casts this demon out and sends the demon into the pigs. The pigs run into the sea, and then everybody's like, Jesus, we need you to leave town. We need you to leave town. It's just, this isn't working out for us. And at the end of the story, something interesting happens. Remember, we mentioned the secret gospel, the secret of the good news. Jesus hasn't let out yet that he is the Messiah, and he keeps telling demons and people not to proclaim him as such. At the end of the story, he tells the demoniac to go home to proclaim how much the Lord has done for him. And I think Jesus meant God. But the guy goes away and he starts proclaiming all over the Decapolis, all over this region of 10 cities, how much Jesus has done for him. So, again, as much as Jesus tries to keep this a secret, word is getting out at the very least. But really, the true identity of who Jesus is still hasn't been grasped by his followers or the people that he is healing and serving, or even the people that are opposing him. His true identity hasn't come to shape just yet. Now, verse 21 to the end of the chapter is quintessential Mark. Mark does this a lot, where he'll take two stories and he'll stick one story in the middle of the other story. So verses 21 through 24, he is confronted. He's back on the eastern side of the Sea of Galilee again. So back in home turf. And so there's a synagogue, and the synagogue leader asks him to come heal his daughter. And so that story starts in those first few verses, and then we get this, it's intercut with the story of Jesus healing a woman with a hemorrhage who's bleeding. Okay. And then it goes back to the story of Jesus healing the girl, the daughter of the synagogue leader. So there's a lot to be taken from this. Again, maybe right at first, we should note it's a synagogue leader that's coming to Jesus. And we've seen tension between Jesus and religious leaders already in the Gospel of Mark. But here is a religious leader that is seeking Jesus' help. So that tells us that not all of the religious leadership was in line with the temple in Jerusalem. Not all of the religious leaders were antagonistic to Jesus. So that's something to note. Second, Jesus heals a girl and he heals a woman, right? And earlier he healed Peter's mother-in-law. So this is significant because women were not seen as important in this society. It's a degree of patriarchy that is foreign to us, even in our current patriarchal society. In this, there is still patriarchy in our society, but it's even more so and more intense here in the society Jesus moved around in. And the woman that is hemorrhaging, not only is she a woman, but she's bleeding. Again, this story, someone who's bleeding is unclean. So Jesus was healing a foreigner around pigs. Pigs are unclean, and this woman who is bleeding and unclean. Jesus is still, even when he takes this field trip, which I think he did in order to let the heat off a little bit, to get out of the way of the people that are organizing against him, and he's still like pushing the boundaries of what they're supposed to be doing. That the restrictions about how they're supposed to care for people, he's not following. The social conventions of how you care about people in the society, he's breaking those rules still, even when he's distancing himself, physically distancing himself from those who oppose him. He's still pushing that in this chapter. So those are just some interesting things about this chapter. I hope you'll come back tomorrow as we'll dive into chapter 6. And I hope you remember God loves you more than you can possibly imagine.